class. Today we are here to talk about the fourth and final macromolecule. So where we have been, we have already talked about carbohydrates, so you should have a good understanding of the structure of carbohydrates. We've talked about lipids, so you should have a good idea of lipids. We've talked a lot about proteins, especially with Pogel activities, talking about the structure of proteins and the bonds made up of peptide bonds and stuff like that. So those should all be things that you're familiar with, but this one we haven't talked about at all. And the fourth type of macromolecule is nucleic acids. And I just want to point out, so in our body we use carbohydrates for energy, we use lipids for energy storage, we use proteins as sort of a functional component that does everything. But nucleic acids we primarily use for information storage. We primarily store information. Now there's an exception. ATP is a nucleic acid, and we use that to store cellular energy, but the main thing that we use nucleic acids for is to store information. Okay, so nucleic acids, so what we talked about is everything has a monomer, right? They're these little pieces that we can put together, little Lego pieces that we can use to build a big Lego house, and those monomers. Well, nucleic acids have monomers, and those monomers are called a nucleotide. And nucleotides look like this. They have three parts. And the first part they have is a sugar, right? A sugar molecule. And then attached to the sugar molecule, they have a phosphate group. And then attached to the phosphate group, they have a nitrogen base. Now, if you remember, if we're looking at the structure of DNA, you remember that it has this ladder-like structure. And then along, we'll make the ladder over here because it won't stay. So then along these ladder-like rungs, there's the rungs or the stairs of the ladder, right? And then this part of the ladder right here, you remember that it has sugar, phosphate repeating. So right over here, it has sugar, phosphate repeating. And then these parts right here are made up of nitrogen bases. Well, that's where this gets. We have sugar, phosphate, and they're going to link together to make that sugar, phosphate repeating. And then sticking off are going to make these staircases or these nitrogen bases. So we put these together, and they form these big double chains, or they form these polymers. So a polymer of a nucleic acid is DNA. So DNA is our polymer of nucleic acids. Also, RNA is another polymer. Okay, so if we look over here, we can just point this out. Here's our phosphate group here. Here's our sugar. And here's our nitrogen base. So right here, this thing I'm going to circle is one nucleotide. This part right here is another nucleotide. Right, you can see these whole bunch of nucleotides put together build up this large polymer of DNA, and this is the structure of DNA as we're familiar with. So that's how they're linked together. So we have monomers, nucleotides are linked together to form polymers, DNA or RNA. So here's that DNA molecule again. Once again, we have this whole phosphate and sugar repeating, sugar, phosphate. This one down here, we have the sugar phosphate, right? So a sugar, phosphate, and a base, in this case the base is adenine, and those you should be fairly familiar with, make a nucleotide. So here's one nucleotide. And over here, sugar, phosphate, and base make another nucleotide. So there's another nucleotide. So these nucleotides are all lumped together to form DNA. Okay? So monomers making up the polymer. Good, that's where we're going to stop for today. Thank you very much, team. If you have any questions about that, just make sure you know a nucleotide, the parts of a nucleotide, and the fact that nucleotides build polymers or the DNA or RNA molecule. Great. Thank you very much, class. We'll see you soon. Bye.